out that the sun shines down its power to all the world and makes the wind blow strong as it will. I wonder hope gentle rains can fall upon the land, so lovely earth can stay lovely still. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is Energy Week with George Harvey and Tom Fennell. The famous Tom Fennell. Who knows how to raise his right hand. We joke about this because we're looking at a monitor that shows us, and of course, when you raise your right hand, it looks like you've raised your left.
Well, because the monitor doesn't work like a mirror.
It's not a mirror. Okay. So what happens here is that every day I go to the news and I look up what is the latest stuff about energy and climate change and such what. And I keep that at a blog called geoharvey.wordpress.com. And the best of the blog winds up being on this show. We do about 20 items per week. And by the way, I promised Nancy Ray Mallory, who's the editor of Green Energy Times, that I would put in a plug for something she needs, which is that she needs a couple of people to deliver papers. It's once every other month in the area of Brattleboro, well, really probably Putney and south, possibly all the way down to Northampton. But just in case anybody wants...
All the way down to Northampton?
Yeah, quite possibly.
It's a full-day job, isn't it?
More than a day. It's what Bill Pearson was doing. I guess Bill is getting to a point where he doesn't want to do it anymore. Well, you know, you ask him and he says, I'm more than 70 years old. Okay, Bill.
He's well preserved.
He's pretty well preserved. But he wanted to do other things, I guess, and so she's looking for somebody to do that. And it was more than a one-day job. Yeah. Because it was all over the place. But nevertheless, if you want to do that,
I don't particularly want to.
You don't want it.
I'm busy enough the way it is.
But her number is 802-439-6675 in case anybody wants to get involved in that. It's every other month, about the 15th of the month, and that is February.
Does she pay?
She pays.
Oh, okay.
Not well. Okay. So I guess we can just start Thursday, September 10th.
We're ready to go up here.
Ready to go. Okay, from Think Progress, California is about to make a historic move. It's already made the move, but the news of that day was it's about to make a historic move on climate change with a package of bills to be voted on. One calls for a 50% reduction in petroleum use in cars and trucks, a 50% increase in energy efficiency in buildings, and a 50% of the state's utility power derived from renewable energy, all by 2030. And it did not make it in quite in that form.
We will visit again later.
We will.
By the way, this particular week's assortment had a lot of very good articles. Some of them are very long.
Oh, yeah.
You know, so
long.
We can't discuss them on this show. There's just not enough time. We'd be here till next Tuesday.
Well.
So if I see an article or hear an article that I like, how do I look it up? What do I do?
Oh, yes. Glad you asked. You can go to the blog, geoharvey.wordpress.com. I try to tell what dates these things came out on, and you just look for the blog entry for that date, and you'll find it, I hope.
So you just click on the...
click on the link that's given.
Link. In this case, I'll put it up. The link would say, Think Progress.
It would say Think Progress right at the end of the little synopsis.
Okay.
Okay.
Sounds easy enough.
Thank you, Tom, for reminding me. Okay. Our next article is from Clean Technica. The U.S. residential solar market grew by 70% in the first half of 2015, with another 729 megawatts of utility-scale solar during the second quarter. The nation has installed more than a gigawatt of PV in the last 7 quarters.
For the last 7 quarters.
For the last 7 quarters.
That's a gigawatt each quarter, right?
It's what it sounds like. According to the Solar Energy Industry Association's last report, U.S. solar power capacity now exceeds 20 gigawatts. Yes, it would have to be a gigawatt per quarter to do that.
Sounds like a lot.
It sounds like a lot. There are a lot of people who would look at that and say, well, that's 20 nuclear reactors, because people think of nuclear reactors as being a gigawatt. We have to explain again and again, just to make sure people get it. The gigawatt of solar is not equal to a gigawatt of nuclear.
Because it gets dark at night.
Well, that's part of it. That actually is part of it. Solar power does not operate at a. Let me put it this way: if you look at the theoretical maximum amount of power that a plant would produce if it were running 24 hours a day for a year, and then whatever it is, and you divide that by what it actually produces. Divide that into what it actually produces. You get a percentage, and the percentage for solar varies from about 12.5% to about 25%, depending upon where you are and what the weather's like and things like that. Nuclear, it's much closer to 100%. In the United States, it's about 90%. In the rest of the world, it's between 70 and 80.
Okay.
And I think that's an indication that the U.S. nuclear people are possibly doing things that they shouldn't be doing, but
they wouldn't do a thing like that.
No, never.
And if they did, they sure as heck wouldn't tell us.
I think that's true. Nevertheless, the U.S. Nuclear power industry has got the highest capacity factor, and people say that's good. And I say, so what?
We'll take away from this article.
Yeah.
Half of the solar that we just mentioned is happening in California.
Yes.
They're way ahead of the game.
Right.
Interesting, the other one that's coming up is way behind California, but you wouldn't expect it. It's North Carolina.
North Carolina, I'm seeing in the news every day.
Yeah, they're
solar.
progressive in this
very,
area.
Very progressive, and that is
Nevada,
spreading.
New York, and Massachusetts take up the rest. Nevada, I'm not surprised.
No.
But New York and Massachusetts?
Yeah.
We have cloudy days here.
Yes, we do. And Arizona and New Mexico aren't in that list for a very simple reason, and that's politics.
Politics, yeah, because they certainly have the deserts, don't they?
They've got the deserts, but the utilities down there are punitive when it comes to solar.
They don't like the idea.
They don't like it. One of the utilities proposed a $100 a month connect charge for anybody who had solar on the roof.
Yeah, but it didn't work.
Didn't work, but there are other organizations that are trying to do that or something like it. What have you got there?
Oh, this is just the same article. This came from the article, and it's 2 drawings of people putting up solar panels.
Yeah. Okay. So,
moving right along.
NewsHerald.com told us also on Thursday, a broad coalition of Ohio's business, health, community, and environmental groups called Wednesday for Ohio business lawmakers to reinstate mandatory targets for use of renewable and advanced energy sources such as wind, solar, and clean coal. A law to have the state get 25% of its power from renewables is on hold for 2 years.
So here again, we got some politics playing.
Politics. And the thing that's really sad about this, really, really, really sad about it, is what are they doing? They're saying we don't want to have solar put in, we don't want to have wind put in, we don't want to have any of those things put in, and we want to check it out and make sure that we know.
Let's study it first.
Let's study it first. Well, what's happening? They're really trying to protect the coal miners.
Oh yeah.
And the coal miners need their jobs. They could get jobs in the wind industry or the solar.
Ohio's a coal mining state.
Yeah, it's a coal mining state. But look at what's happening to coal.
Yeah.
Alpha Natural Resources. 7 years ago, the stock was trading at $104 a share. Last week, it dropped to a low of just below 4 cents per share.
Wow.
That's well. At the moment they were declaring.
I pulled my investments out.
At the moment they were declaring bankruptcy, but Peabody Energy, they're hurting. They were almost $90 a share, and they're down to about $1.50. And Why do you suppose the Koch brothers are so adamant about renewable power?
It's because they're well invested in fossil fuels.
They're invested in fossil fuels. So what's happened? Ohio has said, we don't want to do that. So the people who would put up the solar and the wind are out of work at just the same moment that the coal miners are all being put out of work because renewable energy is going in elsewhere.
It's not helping Ohio much.
It is not helping Ohio, and these people who were involved in this thing were upset about that. They want to get back on the bandwagon. Okay, we're up to Friday.
This one
September
coming
11th.
up is pretty interesting.
This is an interesting one, and the thing that was really funny about this was I was doing the news check on Friday morning, and came across this article, and it happens that the person who designed the energy efficiency and energy components of this building,
which is very well done.
Stephen Strong was in Brattleboro that same day, talking about, among other things, this
but
building.
We didn't know about this until this week.
Well, I knew about the Bullet building.
But you didn't share that information.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Anyway, what happens is this building is built so that it basically gets 100% of its energy and 100% of its water and so forth and so forth from its own footprint on the land.
And that's called the greenest commercial building in the world.
Well, I think it's the greenest building in the world, aside from huts in the that people build out in the outback in Africa and so forth, where they aren't using any energy.
By the way, take a look at that picture.
Yeah.
This is a very large building.
Yes, and it's got a very
large. In the lower left corner,
yeah,
there's a picture of a man walking down the street.
Yes.
And you can show how big this building really is.
Yeah.
It's large.
It's large. And that solar, that thing on the roof is considered legally a canopy, which meant that they didn't have to get any special permission to put it on, as opposed to a solar array, which they could not have put above the sidewalk.
Oh.
And but because it's a canopy, an awning. I'm sorry, because it's an awning.
They sneaked that one.
And the interesting thing about that was the people in Seattle who were in charge of permissions and things of that nature were just tripping over themselves to try to support this building.
Well, it looks like they did a lot of things in a very interesting way. I mean,
yeah,
everything about the building is state-of-the-art,
right?
Automatic blinds,
yeah.
Tenant plug loads are all. These are the things you plug into the wall.
Yeah,
they're all working on these things to keep them low and everything.
Yes,
it's
yes, and the people who were doing the permitting and so forth were actually going and suggesting things about, the business of that thing being called an awning. Yeah. Was actually a suggestion from the people who are in charge of permissions, saying you don't need permission. But Stephen Strong, talking about this building, talked about efficiency and the how big that solar array would have to be if it were not that the building is extremely efficient. And he says the things that you have to do to produce a really good green building, the first thing is efficiency. Yeah. The second thing is efficiency. The third thing is efficiency. The fourth thing is efficiency. The fifth thing is efficiency. And there was something else that he used as the sixth thing, but it translated into efficiency.
Looks like a paper airplane to me.
The building?
Yeah.
I can see that. Yeah. Okay.
Moving right along.
Penn Energy gave us this. The French government is ending export subsidies for building coal plants abroad. What do you think of that?
That's abroad from France.
Abroad from France. Yeah. As the country tries to clean up its environmental reputation before hosting landmark UN climate talks, Prime Minister Manuel Valls,
I don't know, never hear about him.
No. Announced the immediate end to coal credits primarily used by the French group Alstom, which has not responded publicly. And by the way, I apologize for my bad pronunciation of French. I never learned it, which was one of my faults as
Nor
a
did
child.
I. Can't help you there.
How in the world, I can pronounce Welsh. I can't pronounce French. What is this? I don't know. So there is a picture of coal.
I think that's what it is.
That's what it is, being stored. Okay, our next item is from the BBC. Also on Friday, September 11th. The International Energy Agency predicts U.S. oil output next year will see the steepest fall since 1992 thanks to low oil prices. U.S. oil production has increased to a record high in recent years as high prices made investment worthwhile. Prices halved over the past year as demand fell in line with slower economic growth.
So the oil is there and nobody wants it.
Yeah, and
Sort of.
Here we have a nodding donkey. Yeah, I think everybody recognizes that pump.
Oh yeah.
They're called nodding donkeys.
Nodding donkey?
I didn't know that until
I didn't
recently.
either. I just found that out.
Yeah, it's kind of a neat name for it. It does look like a kind of a child's toy.
And they go up and down and up and down.
Endlessly.
Up and down. All the time.
All the time.
Endlessly,
Although nowadays, I did a thing looking at wind turbines on Google Earth. You can see them in the area around Roscoe, Texas. You can see them elsewhere too. But around Roscoe, Texas, the prairie has got all these wind turbines, and also are decrepit, abandoned, nodding donkeys in various states of disrepair.
Well, that used to be an oil country.
It used to be oil country, and the farmers.
That's what made one of the things that made Texas wealthy.
Yeah, and the farmers in Roscoe, Texas, got together, and they put together 100,000 acres of land, and went out and found a company that was big enough to develop it, and they put in 634 wind turbines, which are earning those.
Boy, that's a lot.
It's a lot. It's earning
That's a lot.
the farmers, a small, not a huge amount of money, but it's enough money to make a difference in their lives. And so you've got the whole town of Roscoe, 1,600 people, and all those farmers on 400 farms, and they all live inside the wind farm.
So it doesn't sound like the horrible noises that turbines emit are
Well,
bothering them much.
I will invite anybody who thinks this is not true to call the municipal building in Roscoe, Texas.
You've done this, haven't you?
I've done it several times. Call the municipal building in Roscoe, Texas, and talk to whoever happens to answer the phone.
Yeah.
You're not going to get a political person that way who says, "Yeah, move to Roscoe." And I call these people and say, "How is it living in a wind farm?" "Oh, we like it." What can I say? You can do that with Greensburg, Kansas, too, where they have a city of 1,000 acres, and in the 1,000 acres, there's 15 wind turbines. That's where the wind turbine is in the hospital parking lot.
Yeah.
Well, people out there don't get wind turbine syndrome because they don't have anti-wind activists to tell them they have to. Nevertheless, moving on, I suppose. I've probably angered at least 3 people. Sorry about that. BBC, the International Energy Agency, predicts U.S. oil output next year will see the steepest fall. I've already done that one.
Yeah.
Bakken.com.
That's the one. Yep.
Bakken.com.
Yep.
In the face of intense lobbying from the oil industry, Jerry Brown, governor of California, and legislative leaders on Wednesday dropped their attempt to pass a law mandating 50% reduction in petroleum use in the state over the next 15 years. This is vehicular petroleum use.
Yeah,
Despite the defeat, Brown...
The other 2 aspects have not been changed.
Yes, efficiency and electricity.
Yeah.
But what happened was the lobbying efforts of the oil industry got enough legislators to say that they would not back that bill, that in order to get past what they wanted passed, they had to drop that.
This is the sequel to the first article.
It is indeed.
Tonight.
That's what it is. And by the way, I didn't have it in this week's list of things because I figured I'd just tack it on the bill as it stood passed. It's going to Jerry Brown. He will probably sign it.
What's left of the bill?
What's left
Which
of
is
it.
still most of the bill.
Which is still most of it.
Okay,
yeah.
cool.
Okay. Now we're up to Saturday, September 12th. And we got this from Truth Dig. The more renewables a country deploys, the more efficient its energy use, according to a study by 8 countries that consume half the world's electricity. The researchers estimate that by combining investments in renewables and energy efficiency, the world's total energy demand can be reduced by 25% by 2030. And you know what? I don't believe it. I think it can be reduced by a good deal more than 25%.
Yeah. Interesting picture up there. It's a typical Indian home in the countryside.
Yeah.
And they're cooking over an open fire in the house.
In the house, no
There's probably
venting.
no windows in the house.
No venting. And this, by the way, causes the deaths of about 10,000 people a day worldwide.
Wow.
Well, the World Health Organization says about 20,000 people die of air pollution.
Fumes. Everybody's breathing fumes.
About 20,000 people die of air pollution every day, and about, not quite half of it, it's less than 10,000, not quite half of it is because of what we just saw. And about half of it is because we are driving cars that consume gasoline and heating our houses with oil and burning coal.
Well, the article is about the efficiency.
Yeah.
But they're not even mentioning the health effects.
Yeah.
That's a second order benefit.
It is. What's happening here, and I don't think the article really went into this, there was an invention about 25 years ago. This was invented about 25 years ago. It's a thing called a rocket stove.
Yeah.
And the rocket stove
pretty efficient.
Is so efficient.
Yeah.
It's unbelievable. And it's basically, they're just burning twigs and stuff like that, but it's really, really efficient compared to the kind of standard three stone thing that you see in the classical.
Yeah.
That's Mexican, of course, but it's all over the world. And chimneys were not even invented until the High Middle Ages. The ancient people didn't have chimneys. They had no idea what that was all about. Right. And the way people
stinking chimneys.
Yeah, right. The way people heated their homes was by having a brazier or a hearth in the middle of the house.
Plus, they let the cows in.
In many places they did indeed, and that is not as bad as it sounds, because the cows lived in one end of the house and the people lived in the other end. So. Okay. Yeah, I've actually known people who allowed their chickens to live in the house, but I won't go into that. The rocket stove is very, very efficient, and it makes it, if you don't even combine it with venting, it's still, because it's efficient.
Because it's so efficient. I got a little video home how to make a rocket stove out of 3 cinder
blocks. Yeah, that's the one everybody starts with.
What a thing for camping.
Yeah, well, you can do that for camping. Yeah, absolutely. Although
basically, that's what this was oriented towards. Bring along a couple of cinder blocks, and you got a super fire for cooking.
Yeah. Okay. Clean Technica. A research team from Lawrence Berkeley National Laboratory has figured out what to do about carbon dioxide from industrial emissions.
Oh, I love this article.
Convert it into carbon monoxide and then turn that into useful products like plastics. I think
that's a lot better than putting it down in an old salt mine.
I guess it is. Carbon recycling sure beats sequestration in a long-term sustainable solution. And you know what? I think I know where they got that idea.
Where?
Well, we were talking about it on this show 2 years ago.
Oh, okay. By the way, I saw the statistics. We got an audience in California.
I know that, and in Texas.
People watch us in California.
What can I say?
Hi there, California.
Get the picture off the screen before you wave. Put yourself on the screen, Tom, then wave.
Hello there.
No, it's not on yet. You got to do it. You got to click it.
Yep, I got it on the wrong.
There you go. Okay. Hello there. Hello there, California. So this is a picture of, I believe that's a atomic lattice or
Well,
molecular
it's called
lattice.
a covalent organic framework.
There you go.
That's worth.
Whatever it's worth.
Think of a sponge with a crystalline structure, and you're on the right track.
Actually, sponges do have crystalline structures. Yeah, you're on the right track. And basically what this does, as I understood what was going on there, is this is a catalyst for...
If you unfolded a covalent organic framework the size of a sugar cube, it would cover a football field.
Wow.
These things are folded and folded and folded. There's all sorts of...
Wow.
There's a lot of area inside those things.
Well, there you go.
I don't understand this myself,
That's okay.
but I'm impressed.
Well, you know, it's like carbon filter. You know, it's the same kind of thing. A cubic centimeter of carbon filter is, I don't know, like a square mile of surface that can absorb. It's pretty
Again,
crazy.
it's carbon. We're dealing...
Well, we're dealing with atoms.
Atoms of carbon.
They tend to be rather small. Okay.
Well, that one there is 23.5 angstrom units. How big is an angstrom?
I have no idea.
It's very, very small.
I can't see an angstrom, I can tell you that. You know, I'll tell you one thing though. Atoms are really small, but the photons that are used, are invisible light, are bigger.
Are they really bigger than atoms?
Well, they're in the
sort of.
Sort of.
Yeah.
I shouldn't say they're bigger. They're big enough that bouncing them off atoms is not something that is useful for looking at atoms in a microscope, which is why we have electron microscopes.
Yeah.
And the other thing that's interesting about things, these small cells. You know, bacterial cells are so small, it's unbelievable. And yet there are cells in nature that are so big that you can see them clearly.
Yeah.
There's a thing called a stentor. We found some of those in our water. And not town water. This is in the water in a pond. And it looks like a
plant,
horn.
Isn't it?
It's a single-celled thing that looks like a horn, but you can see they're like 1/8 of an inch long.
And it's one cell.
And it's one cell.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, let's keep going. Is that a good idea?
I think so.
Okay. Penn Energy, we're still on Saturday. We haven't gone very far, have we? Regulators have identified almost 1,200 nautical miles off the South Carolina coast with the potential to be leased for the development of wind energy. The Federal Bureau of Ocean and Energy Management is publishing maps in the Federal Register as the first step in seeking comment on the proposal.
And here's a map.
There's the map. And you know, this brings to mind, people object to these things because they kill birds. And I want to point out that the Audubon Society supported Cape Wind because they say it would save birds to have that energy.
Well, what this article says, generally the tracks are no closer than 6 nautical miles from the shoreline to avoid the high concentration of birds that fly nearer to shore.
Right. And we've seen pictures.
In South Carolina, that's pelicans. They're all over the place. And it's so neat, you know?
Yeah, they are. They're kind of neat, I have to agree. And we've seen maps of, you know, they've got radar so accurate now, so precise, that it can actually track birds. And you can see the tracks of birds going through wind farms.
And they avoid the turbines.
They avoid the turbines. They're not stupid, or at least they're smarter than I am. Let me put it that way.
Dodos used to be, but they're gone.
I guess. Okay, we're up to Sunday, September 13th. And now we have back home we have an opinion piece in the Christian Science Monitor. I marked it as an opinion piece.
This is a good article.
This is a good article. We are not going to be able to do it justice here, but you can look at it by going to the blog, geoharvey.wordpress.com, and look at the entry for September 13th. The article is titled, How Vermont Became a Clean Power Powerhouse. David Blittersdorf built his first wind turbine to power the lights in his sugar shack in Pittsford, Vermont, where he boiled maple sap at age 14.
And there's David up there on
There's
the screen.
David, yep. And the Burlington Electric Department's journey toward becoming 100% renewable first took a form at the local Dairy Queen.
Yeah, I read that article. A little.
It's kind of a fascinating article. Yeah. And one of the things I like about Vermont is that everybody can meet everybody else if they want to. I've met David Blittersdorf. I just walked up to him and said, "Hi, I'm George Harvey." And he said, "Hello, George. I like what you're doing." What can I say? Oh, well.
There's
Blittersdorf,
that they're talking about.
Yep.
Here's the other guy they're talking about. This is
the guy who did
Burlington Electric.
Yeah, Burlington Electric. And
this is John Irving.
John Irving. I wonder if he's related to Bindi Irving. Probably not. You know who Bindi Irving is?
No, I have no idea.
Oh, it's the guy who did the nature show in Australia.
Okay.
His daughter. He died because he got a
I remember that guy.
thing in his heart from a stingray. And his little girl.
Bad and
his little girl has grown up.
Well, the Burlington plant was built in the late 80s.
Yeah.
It was planned in the 70s in a Dairy Queen. That's where this whole idea came from.
There you go.
But it's still state of the art.
Yeah.
I mean, it's very efficient.
And
they got a forester on staff.
Yes.
So they make sure that the wood is properly harvested.
What we're talking about here is a biomass plant.
Yeah.
And people, the Obama administration is saying that biomass is not a good approach to dealing with carbon emissions, but they are at odds with the naturalists and the energy people in the state of Vermont, who have something to say about that and say.
Well, I think the difference here is that Burlington Electric, as I said, has a forester on their staff.
Right.
They inspect the wood, make sure that it's renewably harvested.
Right.
They're not clear cutting, and they're not doing crazy things.
And they're also not clear cutting forests, pelletizing it and shipping it to England.
No, they're shipping it to Burlington.
Which happens to be very close by. So that makes a difference. Okay. We are up to Ohio, Crane's Cleveland business. And this again is I marked it as an opinion piece. Ohio supplies national solar boom sees own capacity slip. Ohio is a cautionary tale of how smart government policy, like the federal investment tax credit, can help a young, cutting-edge industry like solar grow, attract investment, and create jobs, while bad government policy can stunt the growth of an industry. And of course, the article, which is being published in Cleveland, is saying Ohio is not making it. And we mentioned this earlier in the show. They've lost their solar and wind industry, and they have not helped their coal miners. So what did they do? They just made all the jobs go elsewhere.
Basically, yeah.
Which is
what they could have, they didn't.
Yeah, that's right. Okay. Our next item comes from Renews, and this is Monday, September 14th. Vattenfall, that's Swedish. I don't know how to pronounce Swedish. Stadtwerke München and Vattenfall have started inner park array cabling at the 288 megawatt Sandbank offshore wind farm in the German North Sea. The developers said the first power cable has been installed between monopiles SB28C and SB29C.
Like you really care.
Like you really care. The inner park cables will transport electricity from the 72 wind power plants to the farm's offshore substation.
I guess they're calling each windmill a wind power plant.
Yes, they are, I believe.
Interesting ship here.
It is, isn't it?
Now that's specially built to handle this subsea cable.
Yeah. You can see the spool on there.
You can see the spool and see how it unravels. And they got everything they need to splice it and hook it up, drop it down on the sea. The only thing they're not doing here is burying it.
Yeah. The spool is probably big enough to put a
picture up here.
Put a good sized exercise track in. You know, this is not small. The spool is about as wide as that boom of the crane is long. It's a little bit smaller than that. It's on the far end of the
We don't have
vessel.
any reference in that picture to show you how big it is, except maybe for the size of the windows on the bridge.
Yeah.
That's a pretty big ship.
Yes, it's a pretty big ship. It's wide and it's not very long. And I'm always amazed by these things because they're operating cranes. And in any kind of sea motion, I would expect things to be rocking around like mad.
Well, they probably are, but these things are probably going along with it.
Yeah, probably. Okay, from Renew Economy, we have this item. Global Investment Bank UBS has conducted the first in-depth analysis of the Labour Party's proposed 50% renewable energy target for Australia by 2030. We are going to get back to Australia.
Yeah, we will. There's been some big changes over there.
Concluding that it will require about $80 billion in investment, but much of this would be spent anyway. UBS says that up to 20 gigawatts of wind energy will need to be built by 2030 and 26 gigawatts of solar. And by the way, the capacity factor of wind power has increased and increased and increased. And when I started looking at capacity factors of wind power, it was down around 33% or something. And I've seen wind turbines, not onshore, but offshore wind turbines, that have capacity factors that are said to be in the range of 60%. So they are competitive in terms of capacity factor with combined cycle natural gas.
Mm-hmm.
And this is...
well, one of the reasons for that is they're getting bigger.
They're getting bigger.
Up taller where the wind is,
Yep.
and out to sea the wind always blows.
Yep,
and the winds.
Yep, and the blades are being designed more carefully. And you remember Connor's? I forget the name of the boat, but it was a guy named Connor who did the America's Cup. He had a catamaran. It was about 1989 or something like that. The sail was shaped like an airplane wing.
Okay.
Okay,
Yeah.
and that sail was designed with the help of a Fortran compiler, which I worked on.
Uh-huh.
So I always feel a little bit, but I see these things on the wind turbines all the time, where somebody comes along with a piece of software that is just a little bit better, and it'll increase the efficiency by 5% or something, and that increases the capacity factor by 2%. And you do that enough times, and you're getting to a really appreciable difference. And you're getting to a point where here's a wind turbine which is efficient and comparable to natural gas, and it's no wonder that wind turbines are starting to beat natural gas in competitive pricing for the electricity they produce.
Mm-hmm.
So this is it. We're entering into a new world here.
There's a little takeaway here. It says the intervention of UBS, which is the Swiss bank that's
Yes,
behind this,
right.
comes at a critical time with the Canning by-election. Well, exactly what that means, I don't know, but they had a new election.
The member of Parliament
rumblings
died. Yeah.
about Prime Minister Tony Abbott,
Yeah.
who is implacably opposed to renewable energy, wind in particular.
And gives money to the coal industry because
Yeah.
he thinks that's the future of Australia.
And I got a little note here, see below.
See below.
We're going to be talking about that again.
We are going to talk about this again.
And then it ends with, if wind energy is so cheap, why aren't wind farms being built?
Yeah,
They're
why?
Talking to the Australian public here.
Right, and that by-election, a member of Parliament died. And
is that what happened?
That's what happened, and so they had and at the time this article came out, there was no the voting on the new member had not yet happened. I don't know whether it has yet because I haven't seen that, but things have changed.
Big time.
Big time. Okay, our next item comes from World Coal. Is that right? Yeah. The Energy Information Administration projects, and when you hear those words, Energy Information Administration projects, be prepared for something that is simply not true. Lower domestic, and sometimes it's true, but you got to be prepared, you know. Lower domestic coal consumption and exports, as well as a slight rise in coal imports, will add to an 86 million short ton decline in production in 2015. That is 9%. That is a serious decline. I mean, that's an industry that is in depression.
Well, yeah.
Coal production,
exactly
yeah, coal production is expected to decline in all coal-producing regions in 2015, with the largest decline on a percentage basis occurring in the Appalachian region. And guess who lives there? The people in Ohio.
Bingo.
Yeah. Well, this is from World Coal, and I feel sorry for the people who are losing their jobs, but I will suggest to them that there are other jobs available if they will just let their state do what it's supposed to be doing.
Well, according to this article, the decline in coal exports
Yeah.
in the U.S. is largely a result of slowing global coal demand,
Yes, like China isn't importing it anymore, and
a
India is.
decline in international coal prices,
Yep, because
and
nobody
increased
wants it.
outputs in other coal exporting countries.
Like Australia, which
Yeah.
is run
Lower
by.
mining costs, cheaper transportation costs, and better exchange rates in other countries have also contributed to hindering U.S. coal producers.
Well, that
I mean,
happens.
it's over.
Yeah. Coal is no longer king, and it is in serious decline.
And in the U.S. itself, lower natural gas prices are causing much of this decline.
Lower natural gas prices are part of it. Although I think the increase in renewables is going to cause it to continue even as natural gas prices increase, which will happen, we don't know when. Our next item is Tuesday, September 15th.
Oh, this was a really nice article.
Yeah.
Long, way long.
Long article,
Yeah.
but a fun article. It is divided into sections for each of these countries. It's in The Guardian. Costa Rica, Afghanistan, China, India, and Albania are all embracing renewable energy sources. 5 experts give their opinions on their futures. Costa Rica is well on its way to becoming the first developing country to have 100% renewable electricity. Hydro, wind, and geothermal resources provide 98% of the country's power already.
This is
And they are pushing to close that gap.
Close that gap. There was so much writing here, I couldn't even take notes. But there was some nice pictures.
Oh,
So
beautiful.
I'll run through the pictures.
picture of Afghanistan is just stunning.
Well, that's here.
I know.
We'll look at the
that is Costa
That's
Rica.
Costa Rica.
Yep.
Has abundant hydro, wind, and geothermal.
And the geothermal comes from a variety of places, like that volcano in the middle of the picture.
Now, the next one we visit, Afghanistan. That's a pretty picture.
Isn't that pretty? I don't think it's showing up on television as well as it did in print. But, you know, it's just stunning.
Decent wind potential in the uplands, and its rivers can be harvested by small-scale hydro.
Yeah. If you lived there, would you really want to be like? I mean, traditionally, Afghanistan. It's always struck me as being a place where people treated war as though it were a sport. Let's have some fun. And the result of that is that if you try to invade Afghanistan, you are in deep trouble.
I think so, yeah.
Deep trouble. Never, please, never invade Afghanistan.
And we've invaded them.
There's only one person I've ever heard of who successfully invaded Afghanistan, and that was Alexander the Great.
Well, that's
that was
why they
over.
called them great. Yeah.
Yes.
Here's a picture of China.
China, there you
They got
go.
solar panels on top of greenhouses that are growing mushrooms.
Wow.
I wouldn't figure they needed greenhouses to grow mushrooms.
Well, they're not really greenhouses.
That's probably correct.
Although, you know, you can grow mushrooms in places that have sunshine, and if you do, you get mushrooms that are very rich in vitamin D.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, that's interesting.
You can harvest them and then expose them to sunshine, and they will build vitamin D after the exposure. Look at this one.
Here's India.
There's India.
Off-grid solar power.
Cattle grazing around the solar panels.
Yeah.
Goodness gracious.
And finally, the last one is kind of maybe even the prettiest picture. This is a hot spring in southern Albania.
Albania, I think, is actually over 100% renewable already. The article, it's hard to know what's going on in these things sometimes. I mean, Paraguay produces about 1,000% of the power that it needs. 1,000%, I said that correctly, from hydro, and it sells 90% of the hydropower that it produces to.
So they're producing far more than they need.
Far more than they need from dams.
Mm-hmm.
And, but, they're not in this list, I guess, because hydro doesn't count. And Albania, as I recall, had 100%
We know
of
very
it.
little about Albania, really.
I don't think anybody knows anything about Albania. Certainly the Italians didn't when they attacked it before the Second World War. The Albanians do, of course, but anyway, there it is.
Moving along.
Our next item comes from Mashable, and this will explain all the stuff we've been talking about.
Remember I said see below?
Wow.
This is below.
This is below. Malcolm Turnbull. I wonder if he's related to Clay Turnbull.
I don't know.
Clay, are you out there? Has replaced, for those who don't know, Clay Turnbull is an anti-nuclear activist local to Brattleboro for the New England Coalition on Nuclear Pollution. Malcolm Turnbull has replaced climate change denier, and
yeah.
coal industry booster Tony Abbott as the Australian Prime Minister. So Abbott,
He's a new boss man.
he's a new boss. Abbott is out. This means Abbott is in the Parliament, but he's not the Prime Minister.
He's not Prime Minister anymore.
This means that one of the world's least enthusiastic backers of a new climate treaty has just been removed from the global stage. While Abbott's views were not aligned with mainstream science, Turnbull's are. And Turnbull actually has, in the past, supported the very incentives that Abbott fought so hard to remove and has succeeded in removing in Australia.
Well, we're talking about Abbott now. He got rid of the government's carbon tax in favor of subsidies for businesses to reduce their emissions. Sounds good. And slashed federal funding for climate research. He touted coal, which emits the most greenhouse gases of any fossil.
He wanted to give he claimed that he was doing this thing of stopping funding for renewable energy in order to save taxpayer money. But instead of reducing taxes, he proposed giving the money to the coal industry.
Well, they need it.
Yeah, right.
From what we talked about.
I will have to point out what I just said might not actually be true, because as I think about it, the source that I got that from was not the best, but that is what I read. And so now we've got a new guy in Australia.
Yeah, and in England too.
And in England too?
Yeah, they got a new guy.
Did they?
He's further to the left than Bernie.
In England?
Yeah. The world is changing.
I don't-
It's changed in the last 2 weeks.
I'm going to have to check that one out. I didn't see that. Okay, should we move on?
We shall move on.
Okay, BurlingtonFreePress.com. I wonder where that is.
Yeah.
Growth in Vermont's clean energy jobs is projected to double in the next 6 to 12 months after a year of outperforming other job sectors, according to a new state report. The growth has generated economic benefits in the form of more jobs and plummeting utility costs, according to Governor Peter Shumlin speaking in Williston, Vermont. And plummeting utility costs, I don't think they're plummeting exactly, but they are going down, which is kind of interesting when you consider
They're going down slowly, but they're going down.
they're going
up
down.
elsewhere.
And 3 times in 3 years, Green Mountain Power has had to go to the Public Service Board to ask permission to reduce rates.
Yeah, yeah.
And this is happening at a time when National Grid was increasing rates by
Well, a
37%.
lot in Massachusetts.
Yeah, and I think there were 50% rate increases in Rhode Island and 100% rate increases in some places in New Hampshire.
Wow.
That's kind of expensive. Well, their power prices in New Hampshire were actually a little low. So it was from a low rate to a high rate. But that's quite a jump. And that, as I said, was in the Burlington Free Press. Now, we are up to Wednesday, September 16th.
Yeah, this is another interesting.
This one just blew me away. And you know what? This is the kind of article that I would look at and I would say, I'm not even going to bother with that.
Yeah.
Because it's so outrageous. Because it's got to be some con artist putting this on. And you know, there are times when I put things in my blog and I really kind of suspect that maybe it is kind of a bit of an overstatement. But here, I'm going to read this and then we can comment on it. A reliably cheap and environmentally friendly battery that uses salt water and other commonly available materials to store electric energy has been awarded the Lemelson MIT Prize. The head of the company making the battery, Aquion, said batteries capable of powering a typical single-family house should cost between $1,000 and $3,000.
There's a picture of basically the smallest battery they make.
Well, yeah.
Which is about 3 feet by 4 feet by 4 feet.
Yeah, and Tom knows that because he's commented on the fact that this is sitting on a pallet. You can see it under the battery. So you've got a fairly good idea of how big this battery is. And, of course, you fill that thing up with water, and it's going to weigh a lot.
So what? You're not going to be moving it.
Well, it's not the kind of thing that you put on your kitchen floor.
I don't think so.
They said it was similar in size to a washing machine or a small refrigerator. I think that's a little bigger than either, but nevertheless, you don't want that in your kitchen because it might wind up in your basement if you try putting it there.
But it's quite a breakthrough because it's cheap and the thing it's really got it's recycled. I'm saying it wrong.
Environmentally friendly.
Well, yeah, but it cycles many more times than a lithium-ion battery.
Right. It is not as efficient as a lithium-ion battery, but it cycles many more times. I bought a lithium-ion battery yesterday.
Yeah, you told me for your bicycle.
Yeah, for my bicycle. I've got an electric assist on my bicycle. I really want to find out if I can get to Marlboro on it. I'll bet I can't.
It's uphill.
It's up a steep hill. I would bet that my landlady would be able to make it to Marlboro, but I think she weighs about half as much as I do. Nevertheless,
you're going to hear more about this battery, though.
And the thing that makes me think, yeah, this is real, is that it was awarded the Lemelson MIT Prize, which is a prestigious award.
Well, the article goes on to say who the people are that have been awarded this prize in the past.
Yes.
And it's a who's who in science in America.
Yeah.
These are all biggies.
This is not a con artist bringing this to market, people. By the way, I would say, if you want to worry about con artists, energy is a place where they are abundant.
Yeah.
I had a prominent anti-wind person tell me, we shouldn't be talking about solar and wind. We should be talking about the secret things the government knows about.
Well, they do.
They know about some things, but I said, what are you talking about? And she said, well, things like anti-gravity. Star Trek? Is that where we are? Anti-gravity. Anybody who thinks that you can get more power out of something than you put into it is either a nuclear physicist or a nut, as far as I'm concerned. And nuclear physicists know you can do that. But unfortunately, you have problems when you're dealing with nuclear physics, like radiation.
Yeah, unfortunately.
Oh, there was another one too. 0-point energy. The people who are con artists are always pushing, not always.
That's because nobody knows what it is.
Well, Steve Rucroft, who was here on our show a couple of times, he was a head of the physics department at Northeastern, and he worked as a group leader at CERN. And I talked to him about 0-point energy. Yeah. He said, "Oh yeah, it's real. It is real." He said, "I hope nobody ever tries to develop it." And I said, why? And he said, well, the theory is that a cubic centimeter of space with nothing in it, not a single atom, the amount of energy that's in that space is greater than all of the energy in the entire observable universe.
I have a hard time wrapping my head around
Yeah,
that.
right. And I said, how can you possibly think that that's true? And he said, well, they had done some tests. The theory said that was the case. They had done some tests which were bizarre. I can't explain them. But the tests indicated that it was probably true, or possibly true. But then he said, the problem with this is, you know, the more concentrated you make the energy, and you can see this in nuclear energy, when you start fooling around with nuclear energy, things can go boom.
Yeah.
And I knew a guy who
Things have gone boom.
Yeah, I knew a guy who got radiation poisoning from the demon core. Is that what it was called? It was a ball of plutonium, and it killed 2 different people on 2 different occasions.
Wow.
And it poisoned a bunch of people. And I knew a guy who was poisoned by that block of plutonium. Don't fool around with nuclear power in your basement. And and Steve Rucroft said, the problem with this stuff is, how do you get that energy? Because if you make a minor miscalculation, you could destroy the entire galaxy. Well, I think
That'd be kind of nasty, wouldn't it?
it would be. I think there are people out there who would be very unhappy about that. Okay.
Moving right along.
Clean
Another one.
Technica.
This one's pretty nice.
Clean Technica. Siemens has for some time been known to have its sights on developing the next generation of wind turbines, a class of platforms rated to 10 megawatts and above. But as a new 200 million euro manufacturing plant takes shape, the company's management has begun speaking more openly on activities geared toward these objectives. 10 megawatt wind turbine. That's
Well, there's a couple of
huge.
pictures up there of existing wind turbines.
Yeah,
The one on the left is Siemens. Their biggest one is 7 megawatts.
right.
The one on the right is Vestas. Theirs is 8 megawatts.
Vestas, by the way, is the largest wind turbine
this
manufacturer
is the largest
in the world.
This is the largest turbine that they make,
Yeah,
and they're the biggest manufacturer.
yeah.
Yeah.
For all of you who are curious about big wind, think about the fact that Vestas, how many people have heard that name, is the biggest manufacturer.
Yeah, very good point. If you look at this picture on the left, you can get some idea how big that thing really is. There's some cars in the bottom of that picture.
Yeah, well, they're just
That
dots
is
on
a
the
very
screen.
large turbine.
And that's a very large turbine.
I
and
had a- I think I
10
have a
megawatt
little-
turbine
little
is
bit
going to
more.
be significantly bigger.
They got a little
And
bit
they're
more
talking
there.
about turbines going up to 20 megawatts. We're talking about real heavy duty stuff here.
That's what they're aiming for.
Yeah. That is, and of course, such a turbine would be enormously expensive because I don't know what it would cost, but I would think that a 10 megawatt turbine might
Well,
cost
20 megawatts is a lot of megawatts.
It's a lot. Tom, we are getting toward the end of our hour, so we should
Well,
deal
we're running
with
close.
last,
We're running close. Matter of fact, I
last
think
little
this is
piece.
the last article.
It is. And so we should cover this. Vermont Biz, and this, of course, was all over the state of Vermont. It was all over the internet. Everybody was jumping for joy. Green Mountain Power's Mary Powell, CEO of Green Mountain Power. This is a woman who wears a blue undershirt with a big red S in the chest.
How do you know that?
Oh, because Stephen Strong said so. Actually, we actually said it on this show before we heard it from Stephen Strong. She was joined by Congressman Peter Welch, Congressman for Vermont, Governor Peter Shumlin, Vermont's governor, Rutland Mayor Chris Louris, and community leaders to announce that Rutland, Vermont is the solar generation capital of New England. More solar power is generated in Rutland per capita than any other New England city.
Yeah, they got a lot. Here's the facts. There's 8 megawatts of solar capacity installed currently,
Yeah,
which is, as you just said, the most solar generation per capita of any city in New England. 50 homes, businesses, and other projects currently generating clean energy in the city.
right.
One of whom, one of the biggest ones, is Green Mountain Power themselves.
Yes.
They got a large photovoltaic.
Yep. Okay, we are at the end of our hour, so we are going to say goodbye. And to all of you who are in Vermont, be proud of Rutland. And for all of you who are not in Vermont, you're invited. It makes the wind blow strong as it will. I wonder how gentle rains can fall upon the land, so lovely earth can stay lovely still.